Welcome back to another episode of One Miss Pod. I'm your host, Zach Long,
I'm Kelly Warner.
and with us today we're joined by Paul Farrell.
Hi.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. Who the fuck are you again?
Like I said, I'm Paul, and I do a couple things. I write a column for Scriptophobics called Written
Oh
Blood.
shit, you're that
Yeah,
Paul.
that's
Oh,
me.
this makes so
That
much
is
more
me.
sense now. I was wondering why we had you on.
Yeah. It's serendipitous in a lot of ways since we both share that in common.
You actually write one of the that's one of the best columns on the internet right now. Period.
Aw, that's kind of you to say. Not necessarily true.
Hey,
But
it is true in my reality.
No, I appreciate it, sir. It's a blast to write, and I'm very happy to do it, and I will continue to do it for as long as you'll have me.
This sounds like I'm supposed to now exchange vows.
I'm bringing a little too much sincerity to this intro. I apologize.
Oh no, not at all. You should have heard last week. Konnichiwa, bitches.
Yeah, that's true. I did hear that. Yeah, so no, I like to. I'm somebody who just loves movies. I like writing about movies. Like I said, I have that column. I do a column on Bloody Disgusting called Hammer Factory, where I go explore the Scream Factory releases of Hammer films and kind of talk about the context of the film. You know, not just the film itself, like how it was made, and then dive into the movie and all the special features and sort of come up with a wraparound around everything about the film from production to its legacy. So that's been a really fun thing as well. So those are kind of
that's Hammer Factory?
Yeah, Hammer Factory.
Oh, and it's only Scream Factory releases.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's a fucking brilliant title then.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I kind of came up with the idea because I was getting into Hammer, and Scream is actually putting out a ton of Hammer and restoring them, and in a lot of cases releasing the restored versions that had never been available in the US, and they're also doing really deep dive special features and things like that. So I kind of wanted to highlight those releases and hopefully get more eyes on Hammer movies, because I think Hammer is like this weird blind spot for a lot of horror fans,
me included.
Yeah, and I was that way for a long time too. Yeah, it's one of those categories where a lot of people know about it. Like, oh yeah, Christopher Lee is Dracula and Peter Cushing is Frankenstein. Like you kind of know those things, but a lot of people
Peter Cushing's the best Frankenstein.
Yeah, and I mean these movies are they're lush, they're beautifully directed. Anyway, I think it's something that I'm hoping to get a lot more eyes on those movies.
You left out what I think is probably the key reason you did this, which was to give yourself a reason to buy more.
Oh, yes, that is incredibly true. And now my wife can't really say anything. I'm like, well, it's for the column. I mean, what am I going to do? I gotta get the release. So
that is relationship 101 advice right there.
Yeah. Just start writing a column about whatever movies you want to buy, and then say it's for the column, and you're done.
Now I want to ask Paul, what is your relationship with Japanese horror specifically?
Sure. So, to be totally transparent, my relationship began with the remakes.
Hey, that's where I think a lot of us began.
Yeah, I was kind of I was the demographic, the right age when these were coming out. So I was in high school. And so every weekend in high school, my friends and I would go to the theater, and we would see whatever the big new movie was, regardless of genre. And so I saw pretty much every big J-horror remake in the theater with a huge crowd.
So you started with your drugs cut down.
Yes, for sure.
That makes sense. But then you moved on to the pure shit, I take it.
Yes, I've moved on to the, as you said, pure shit. And I've loved what I've discovered. And a lot of the ways I've been able to do it is through like these boutique labels putting out nice editions of them. I've discovered a lot of these through Blu-ray. We were kind of chatting. There's a great Ring set through Arrow that has, the 4 films remastered. And it's a great way to discover them. They all sort of feel interconnected that way, and it sort of gives you a reason to dive into them more than just
for sure
clicking a button on a streaming service for me.
Yeah, right.
That's 100% true. But I'm going to actually use what you just said there, though. You mentioned how it actually has 4 movies on it. And Kel, you want to talk for a second about what was this podcast originally was going to be?
Sure, yeah. So originally we had planned, we're doing this, we're calling it the Ring-A-Palooza, but we're trying to watch all the original Ring movies, and originally we were planning with the second episode to be about Spiral, or also known as Raisin, the George Iida film that came out the same day as the original Ring. It's a part 2. We decide we're gonna have a guest. We were gonna have our friend Andrew Roebuck as a guest, but he had a major health scare, and it just didn't feel right to do the episode without him. And so we're going to fold some of that discussion into this episode as we talk about the 2 different Ring 2s, and offer our thoughts and our love to Andrew, who is recovering in the hospital, and we miss you, and hope you get better soon.
Andrew, if you're listening, absolutely wish you well, but also there was a nicer way you could have told us you weren't interested in being on the show again.
Jesus, Zach.
He knows it's all love. if anybody in the world knows, it's him.
But yeah. Oh God. Better soon, Andrew.
I actually think in some ways, not the medical scare way, but I don't know if we would have had a lot to talk about Raisin.
But to be fair, in episodes with Andrew, how many times do we talk about the movie that much?
No, it just becomes about if anybody's heard our Green Slime episode, they know it's all about badges. That was the entirety of that episode,
and the Vietnam War, of course.
Oh my God, yes.
It sounds like a must listen.
That was an amazing time. But also, speaking of that, I would like to table the question: how does Ring 2 remind you of the Vietnam War?
God, I'll think about. I'll have an answer for that at the end of the episode. Maybe we'll forget about it by then.
Kel, do you have any news for releases or anything?
Okay, so no streaming new releases that I can find, but new update from Funimation about the 4K restoration remaster of Akira. Which is coming to Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray December 22nd. So that's kind of cool news that I think fans might be interested in. And you said you had some Funko Pop news.
I think it's a Funko Pop, and okay. I've only just saw it, but okay. Junji Ito is getting a line of releases. They're starting with his character. I don't know the character's name, unfortunately, but it's the one who chews on nails. And it's either like, if it might be Funko, it might be there's this other one I have that does like vinyl releases. Okay. I'm not sure which one of those it was, but it looks really cool. So if you search up Ito figures, you'll see that. That's the one that's released. There was an article on Bloody Disgusting on today, the 17th of September, about it. They only had the image of that one character, but unless I'm misremembering it, it implied that it's going to be a line of figures.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. So I'm super, super just waiting for the Tomy one.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And I think that's about it as far as new releases and other sort of geeky shit that you might be interested in. I guess we can get right to the discussion about this week's movie, which again will be a little bit of discussion of Hideo Nakata's Ring 2 from 1999 and a little bit of discussion about Spiral from George Iida in 98.
So, well, right out the gate, Paul, have you seen both of these films?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Which one do you like more?
Well, I like Ringu 2 more, I would say.
I would 100% agree with you.
Yep.
There is one fantastic moment in Spiral.
Oh.
And then the rest of it gets really boring.
See, the thing about Spiral to me that I kind of thought about it is the movie is constantly summarizing itself. It is constantly telling you what it all meant, what it happened, and that's boring. That's especially boring for horror. And it's like, this is weird, this is different. I'm bored.
I fell asleep in the third act.
Oh.
That's never a good sign in a third
That's
act.
supposed to be the climax.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the climax of that film is when you see the ex-husband character's insides all torn out and he sits up.
Oh, it's like yeah, that's a great shot. Yeah,
that's a great shot, and it happens 7 minutes into the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's all downhill after that.
I agree. I think Spiral, it just felt too. It was trying to be too like academic about everything, and like you said, it did the cardinal sin of over-explaining. Although, not to jump to Ringu 2, Ringu 2 also goes really out of its way to explain everything, but it does it in a more kind of Rec 2 kind of way, where it feels like it's building out the mythology rather than just like.
And also, we're kind of seeing some of it happening instead of just being told about it. Yeah.
I would also say, though, it raises entirely new questions that it doesn't bother to answer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Everything with Spiral is about wrapping it up with a bow. And this is like, in Ring 2, they put the gift into the package, and then they just, like, threw it at a fucking mail carrier. They didn't even close it. They're just like, you make sense of it now.
Well, that feels more in keeping with Ringu, the original Ringu, though, in some ways, because Ringu throws a lot of shit at you without ever really like bothering, which I kind of respect, because it's kind of like, if you're gonna a lot of these movies, to me, especially when they deal with the supernatural, the Japanese horror, particularly at this time, feels like, hey, look. If you're going to watch this movie and be scared by it, you're just going to have to accept its world, because we're not going to bother spending a lot of time trying to ingratiate you to it. We're just going to give it to you, and you're just going to have to enter into it, and that's how it is.
Yeah. That's one of the key points I keep referencing this book. I was reading it before I watched a movie right before this. It's It is Valerie Wee's book, Japanese Horror Films and Their American Remakes. And over and over and over and over and over again, exactly 5 times, she constantly stresses in every chapter how the original Japanese film narrative cohesion is kind of thrown out the window in favor of creating a mood and leaving ambiguity, where the American remakes focus on tying everything together.
Yeah.
And one of the examples that she uses that we talked about in another episode was the film Pulse. In that film, like in the Japanese one, there is no explanation given, and the only explanation that we kind of get is a story of somebody saying, "Fucking maybe it's like this."
right.
It's like a guess. Yeah.
But in the remake, it goes out of its way to be like, okay, what happened was we discovered a new digital frequency which allowed the undead to come into our computers, and now they're taking over. And I feel like Spiral almost kind of falls into that category of being like, here's all this information.
Yep.
Why Ring 2 actually feels like it's it feels like it is a proper Japanese horror film that just is like, here's a few things that we'll answer because we need to answer a couple things because it's a sequel. You need a little more information, but also we're just going to have the ghost say the most cryptic line in this whole series and then just forget about it.
I feel like this one kind of introduced characters that tried to understand it more, whereas before they were trying to save themselves. Here they're trying to unravel the mystery, and so you're getting a little bit more of the scientist and a little bit more of the doctor and the cop and stuff, but they still don't necessarily all find the answers, and most of them die for their troubles.
I really liked the reporter, like the boss of the main girl from the first one. He was really interesting character, but it was funny how quickly he gets kind of the answers and then walks away and just disappears from the movie until the end, and you're like, oh, he's back. Oh, he's haunted. Cool. He kind of deserved that.
Well, he did. That part was such a bummer because that girl is like begging him, like, you're gonna take on the curse from me and you're gonna save me, right? And he's like, oh, for fucking sure, yeah.
I promise.
I got your back on this one. Well, I also like that kind of spooks him, and he's just like, yeah, fuck that, I'm not doing this. And that's, again, feels in line with sort of how, like, that style of storytelling that's so different than what we're used to. And I agree that I think that Spiral just feels more Western in its approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine.
No. Just also mentioning about as far as the Western and the Asian thing. The passing on the curse and then the reassurances of the reminded me so much of the horror film made in the U.S. It Follows, which was itself more ambiguous and kind of feels like a J horror sort of thing, where it's like, no, you're not getting all those answers.
Yeah. That's really true.
Yeah, that is a there is a lot of Japanese horror in It Follows. You're right, 100%.
Yeah.
To bring it back to Spiral for one more second, there's only one other scene that I really want to talk about in that movie, which is in a way kind of echoed in this one.
Okay.
But we have a strong focus in this film, less on the mother and more on the child, where the first film focused on the mother and the child was kind of wrapped into the plot. In Spiral, you have this scene where you just hear, like, oh, there was an accident, and, like, the character, the mother and son from the first movie, oh yeah, they died in a car crash, except the son didn't die in the car crash. He was already dead, and then she crashed.
Yeah.
And we don't see what happens, but God, just hearing about that, like, makes my brain just try to fill it in and see it, and, like, did, like, Samara come out of the tape, the fucking cassette player or something?
I just find it also interesting that Spiral basically David Finchered all of its main characters from the first film, and, like, yeah, they're all dead now. We're moving on.
Well, was that an Alien 3 reference?
It was, yeah.
I was thinking Alien 3 with that one. No, and I think that's one of the reasons Ringu 2 plays so much better for me, is it's so intricately woven into the first movie with all of these, like, side characters reprising their roles and making it feel like there was sort of a bigger story to tell the entire time. So it feels very purposeful in Ringu 2. It doesn't feel forced at all. Whereas Spiral very much feels like kind of a forced sequel.
Right, yeah.
That's actually really funny, too, because I fully agree with you. But, Kel, you were telling me that Spiral is apparently closer to the book sequel.
That's my understanding, is that Spiral, compared to all the other Nakata Ring films, is much more in line with what the author Koji Suzuki wrote, and with virus in the videotape and all sorts of that sort of stuff. So I've heard that people that like the books get something a little bit more out of Spiral than fans of the film. But yeah,
the idea that there was a virus in the tape, it doesn't fully work for me in the context of that movie, but as an idea on its own, I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It sounds very Videodrome. Like,
yeah.
Oh, and I love me some Videodrome.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. I still gotta work on that book.
Speaking of the, the characters and how the supporting characters, what I found interesting also was Ring 2 and Spiral is they both make a main character out of the first film's supporting character, Mai, the ex-husband's I guess girlfriend / student.
And I believe that the proper term is squeeze.
And it's just it's just
only
interesting.
Speak in proper terms.
It's just interesting how both films, they brought her back and she's like, okay, so I'm doing the movie again, or
that's so bizarre.
She is.
She did she's plays that character in 2 films one year and then another film the next year, and she's got to be like, this is the weirdest typecasting I've ever heard of.
Yeah. I love the idea of her, like, being on set for Ringu 2, accidentally reading script pages from Spiral because she's just so confused mentally. She's like, wait, okay, I'm the same character. Wait, sorry, wrong script. Let me read again.
It's like, sorry, wrong script. Wait, but it still worked in this scene.
It'd be like if Halloween 2018 came out in like a year after H2O.
Right.
Like if it came out in 1999, it's like they did H2O and then they just brought Jamie Lee back again to do, another sequel. It's just such a bizarre. I mean, we've had it in other franchises, but never that close together.
No,
you just made me want to see the Boyhood of horror, where like every year they shoot the same like the same characters in a slightly different thing, and they put it together, and it's just like it's you watch them age in front of your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like nobody asked for this. Why did you make it?
Nobody asked for this. That's how they should have done Stranger Things. It should have just been like a Boyhood style thing where the kids just get older throughout the season. But you set it in the same 2-week period.
I was thinking like you.
Years old.
I was thinking that you see the 80s disappear in the background.
Oh, then it can become. Then it's a little bit sad and introspective. It's like time passes by.
Cocaine gives way to meth.
We don't appreciate it.
Or sorry, it was the 90s. Cocaine gives way to heroin, which then gives way to meth.
Yeah. We're not at meth yet. We're not quite at meth. But plenty of cocaine.
Is there anything else to say about Spiral?
I don't think there's a whole lot to say about it. I think it's a bit of a mess of a movie in that it just doesn't work. And I remember liking it more than I did rewatching it this time. I thought it was interesting and kind of like this weird sort of sexual horror that the other Ring movies weren't trying to be. But it doesn't work. It's not a good film, I don't think.
When I started watching it, I actually sent you a message saying I'm loving this.
Mm-hmm.
And then that really quickly faded because it starts great and then nothing really happens.
Yeah, when it's working through the ashes of the previous film, that's okay. And then when the main character, the doctor guy, he's boring as hell.
He's so boring. But again, when you first it opens up on him trying to kill himself and failing, and that's a very interesting place to pick up with a character.
Sure, yeah.
And so it has all these seeds that you're like, this could be great, and then he's haunted by the dead ex-husband, which it's like, okay, that's kind of creepy, but then nothing comes of it. It just slows down for basically 70 minutes.
Yeah, it feels like an undercooked movie. Like a lot of cool ideas that they don't know what to do with, and have no narrative drive. They're just sort of distilled ideas floating around in the plot, and you're just kind of waiting for the movie to end by the end. So
you really are, or you're me and you're sleeping and you wake up and you're like, shit, now I have to rewind and watch some of this again.
You're like, I'll just read the last paragraph of the Wikipedia. I'll be fine.
Hey. How did you know? I'll be honest, I had to read the Wikipedia for Ring 2 after, because I was like, okay, I think I followed, but who is that character?
I am right there with you. Ring 2 gets a little bit, not
convoluted.
Yeah,
convoluted.
Yeah, I didn't want to say convoluted, but it does. I think that's partially because of how much the Ring movies in general throw for as little as they explain things, they give you more information per minute than most other horror movies do in their runtimes. It's nuts.
The big thing that I was missing when I was watching it was when they go to the asylum, I was like, wait, who is this? And it's like, oh, this is the other character from the opening of the first movie who had 2 lines of dialogue and then disappeared for the rest of the fucking movie. Right, yeah, great. Right. I remember her perfectly.
Yeah.
I think that's an example of the Gore Verbinski film doing something better. That he lifts that sequence right from Ring 2 and puts it into the first Ring story with with the mom going to see that kid.
I don't remember that.
You're right.
Yeah. I'll find that soon.
About that.
Even has the curtain thing blocking the TV as she's.
I thought that was. I really liked the curtain moment because you could still see you could see the TV start to fuck up in the background.
That's a good scene.
Really good. It is effective as can be.
Well, I think that's the real strength of the 2 Ringu movies is he does such a good job of staging and blocking, scare sequences and tense sequences that keeps pushing you forward into the next piece, and it makes it easier to sort of accept all of the information that's being flown out. And the information is almost irrelevant.
It really is.
it's kind of like Italian horror in that way, like 70s Italian horror, only more like introspective and somber. It's not insane in that way, but it's like dream logic, and it's more about sort of what you feel and what you're experiencing rather than like some specific narrative.
It's really funny actually how much Italian horror and Japanese horror have in common. To bring it back to Pulse very quickly, I was reading the book on that chapter on it, and it was talking about how Kiyoshi Kurosawa was very deeply inspired by Argento. And I was like, oh shit, I can see that.
That makes sense, actually.
Like, there is a lot of kind of crossover, because the Italian horror just seems to be like, it is a dream. It's very like you're within the psyche of a damaged mind in almost all of those films.
Right.
And they don't care about narrative cohesion at all. They're 100% about mood and atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And the Japanese kind of lift that from them and then put their own spin on it. And you're like, okay, if you like Japanese horror, there's a pretty high chance you'll like Italian horror, but the big difference between those two, and I think that the Ring films show it really well, is that Japanese horror is not about the gruesome typically, unless we talk about their torture porn stuff, but it's more about like the subtle fear and the creeping dread. And there's a lot of shots in Japanese films where we see a character's reacting to something before we see it, and where we're really like building up that tension. Where in the Italian horror, it's a lot about what you're seeing on the screen. It's not so much about how the character is reacting in that tension. It's about, let's get in, let's show the knife pierce the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not about the gruesome or the gore. In fact, I would say from these two movies, it's almost like they're going out of their way not to show you that stuff sometimes artistically. And I think it serves the narrative, and I think it serves sort of the function of the mood they're trying to build. And it makes it feel a little more legitimate in a way. Like,
is it the American? It's in the American remake where the video has like the nail peeling off, isn't it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Like they in America they were like, we need some.
Down. I think a fingernail pushes down on a nail. I think
it's something like that. I think the nail like breaks off because it was representing her trying to scratch out, I thought.
Yeah, something like that.
And it's like we see it on screen, where in this, it doesn't care about that.
No.
The gruesome thing is in what they know, that what your mind can show you is 1,000 times worse than what they can.
Yeah, and on that note, one of the best scares in this was when they're taking a photo of the clay over the skull.
I love that.
And it's like, did I see what I thought I saw? And it's like, does it again. It's like, wait a second. That was a good little
That was some fucking Captain Howdy shit.
Yeah. The clay. Captain Howdy shit. I love it. The clay on the face thing was terrifying. Like that was on par with some of the scariest shit like I've seen. And again, it's a testament to what can be sort of brought about in the mind. I even just think the idea of her like living in that well for 30 years is terrifying. Like
that was a twist I don't remember.
Yeah, like I was like, man, that is crazy. And it completely
just like eating on rats and stuff.
Yeah, right. I'm like, what did she eat? Like it was like the moss in the well. It's just it makes your mind sort of wander, and it's just this thing they throw at you right away. Oh yeah, no, she died like a year ago. It's they just kind of move on from
really
there.
Fucked up. Yeah,
it is, and it's one of the more fucked up concepts. But in a movie so full of ideas, I mean, hell, it goes into all this crazy stuff about sort of the telekinetic stuff and transplanting energies, and I'm like, for a minute there, I thought I was watching like Exorcist 2. Like it was going into some weird ass experimental places.
It does though.
I'm like, it only works here because like the narrative doesn't need to make a ton of sense, and they just need to sort of drive it forward and have the characters explore it on their own terms.
Yeah.
So I just had a lot of fun with all of that, but it also kept me on my toes.
I need to know, what did you two think of the third act, the end, and the big pool stuff?
I want to raise another comparison to It Follows there, actually.
I was going to say, It Follows again.
Yeah, I think It Follows handled it much better, though. I'll throw that out there. Their pool scene is so good.
I like some stuff in it, like, for example, when she crawls out of the well and suddenly she's in the pool. I thought that was cool. But some stuff is laughable, like the one doctor being shoved in there and then electrocuting himself.
No, he doesn't. He's not shoved. He does that purposefully. That was suicide on his part. I think so because that's what the Wikipedia told me.
Okay, well the nurse like trips and falls into him, and then he falls in.
I thought the nurse was trying to stop him from going, and she tripped and she couldn't. I think that they're actually further apart. Like I don't think she's as close to him.
And there's an example of why it doesn't work that well,
because we're like, what the fuck happened?
Right? Yeah.
I admit when the pool thing happened, I was kind of confused at first because they didn't really like go into what they were doing with the pool. And
we're just like,
I'm like, what are we doing in a pool? Like, it kind of took me a minute to piece it together to the glass of water.
Yes, yeah. I was going to ask, do you think it had anything to do with that? Which I thought was kind of an interesting sort of low-tech way of showing the kids' power. Yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of like, eh.
That was my take.
What was the glass of water again?
He was... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So, like, they would take paper and put it into the water, and the water would come up it to a certain amount.
Yes.
Transfer energy to the water, and then it goes up a whole lot more.
Okay, I remember putting the paper in because I watched this with my girlfriend. When they did that, I was like, "Hey, that's how you do the Wiccan system of hydroponics if you're growing plants."
There you go. Yeah, and that's kind of what I took from it. Was like, oh well, I guess like
advice?
Since you can. Like you can transfer energy into a glass of water. If you had a ton of energy, like this evil, spirit, maybe you could transfer into a swimming pool. I mean, and then I'm like, but what do you do with it once it's in the pool? Like, I don't know if that means
it was
like
real short-sighted.
It's just like in a pool now.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, don't ever swim there, but at least we know where she is.
Listen, the YMCA is closed for repair. Yeah. Sorry, guys, you got to go home.
Although I'd be pretty into a haunted pool movie where Tsunaga's just confined to a swimming pool. That could be pretty sweet.
Death Pool, and then there's the pool, not the one from like 2001.
Oh, okay.
There was so many pool movies after like when Swim Fan was coming out.
Oh my god, Swim Fan.
Oh my god, Swim Fan.
There are some haunted pool movies there though.
You know what? Swim Fan would have been a much better movie if the pool had been haunted in it. I think Swim Fan. You take the exact same movie, but you put a ghost in that pool. I think we're in good shape.
Okay, do you put a ghost in that pool, or is the pool itself the ghost? And if the pool itself is the ghost, can we give it Christopher Walken's voice?
I'm going to say yes to everything you just asked. Like the answer is yes.
God. Okay, so so we have the pool scene that happens, and then there's actually a really cool edit where our main character is on the chair. The chair falls back, and then suddenly she's like on cobblestones, and then the camera moves 90 degrees, and we realize she's hanging onto the side of the well.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that was good.
That's a great edit, and that part gets interesting. But what do you make of the line that the ghost tells us? Which is why the ghost says, "Why were you saved?"
or something.
Why were you the only one saved? I think it is. It's something along that line. And why? What is the relevance of this character? What does that line mean? Why does the ghost not even know its own powers?
I thought of it. I thought of it in terms of the only one from the original story that got out and was fine, but I don't know.
I kind of
wait. Does the ghost know that it's in a movie? Then, if it's the only one from the original story, that means the ghost knows it's in a movie.
Is this like the scene in Gremlins 2 when Hulk Hogan breaks the fourth wall? Like,
or the Duke,
the audience,
or the Duke. It was different in the theatrical release. Remember?
Yeah, true.
But also, is she the only one that saw the video and survived? I mean,
I don't know.
So I think she's talking about Yoichi, right? Like, because he's alive. I think I
don't know.
It's such a confusing line,
right? And I don't know. I don't know, but I have my theory was sort of because the whole idea of being saved, right, is also like has dual meaning there because it's not just why did you survive the tape? It's like why do you get to live? Because she's this little girl who was like lived for 30 years in a well. So I think when she looks at Yoichi, who's like a child, like why does he like it's almost a forlorn, like just cry out to the world, like why do you get to be saved? Like why are you so special?
He has
That's
powers
also speaking
similar
to like
to
her
the way
pain.
she
Right.
did.
She's like he's like her, but he's not sort of cursed and jilted in the same way that she is. So I think part of the way he was able to survive was because of his sort of inherent goodness.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe
this
like,
brings up a very interesting question.
I'm thinking I'm getting this now. Yeah.
This is what I like. What my mind was sort of jumping to. I don't know if it's like.
I thought the question was for the woman, not the kid.
I did too, but once you put it onto the kid, that makes more sense.
It does.
But that's one of the things you raised though was that she lived in the pool or in the well for 30 years. If she lived in, so she's still a kid over those course of that 30 years. So here's my question. Is she Jason Voorhees or is she the dwarf from Orphan?
I think she's closer to the Orphan girl, but I think it's more...
Show your work. Show your math.
Okay, so now cut to that gif of Charlie from It's Always Sunny with all the like lines and things on his Wilton board.
Well, here's the thing. I think she's a little more like Jason Voorhees because she's fucking unstoppable.
Yeah, I see her a little bit more Voorhees, where she's not a person anymore. She's something of a monster.
Sure, that makes sense, yeah.
But yeah, either way, it's an odd question. So.
I get that. I get the Voorhees connection.
It's very late for me. I just want to be clear. We're recording. We used to record this like 4 hours from now, but now I get up at 6:30 in the morning and we'll go to a barn all day. Well, half the day. My mind goes to fun places.
I understand. It's tough. I think that I think that her spirit is sort of where she mentally was, right? Because she sort of was stunted. You know, she was put in that well when she was a child.
But the body that we find in the well is still a child's, isn't it? In the first movie,
do they?
Because we see her hug.
Can you tell?
I don't know that you can tell. I thought it was just bones and stuff, and then like goop coming out of the eyes.
Yeah,
a lot of goop.
A lot of goop. Yeah, more. You know, I don't know how much goop is normally in a kid's eyes, but it's tough to pin that. And
down. Paul, that's the most reassuring thing you have said as a father so far.
Oh, good.
I don't know how much goop is in a kid's eye. That's a good thing for a dad not to know.
Yep. No idea. No idea.
That would raise some ethical questions like, shit, that was a great podcast, but do we have to call the authorities?
If I had said, now, I know a lot about how much goop is in a child's eye, so let me tell you, that was no kid. That would have been a darker path for this podcast to take, I think.
Good point. Yeah.
I believe that I think, I'll go back and look, but I really do think that it's the corpse is the size of a child in the first one, because I have a feeling that they did not expect to do this turn.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna bet that too, probably. Yeah, I don't remember for sure.
Probably wasn't intended that she would be 30 years old living in that well. But it also makes me wonder, like, was that time used to sort of hone her insane psychic energy, so that way when she died it was sort of released, and that's how this curse was born? Like, would it have been as strong had she died as a child? You know,
I think that based on the way that Japanese curses work, I think that it deals less with like I think it's the strength of the emotion. So if you were sitting in the bottom of a well for 30 years, stewing on how angry you are to be trapped in the well, it's probably going to be a lot stronger.
Yeah.
So that definitely sounds like, you know what? I've checked your math, Paul, and I think that you got that one right.
All right, good.
You were wrong about the Jason Voorhees question, but
well, you know, you can't get them all. You can try, but you can't get them all.
That's what they don't tell you about Pokemon. They feed you that line. They tell you gotta catch them all, but what they don't tell you is you can't get them all.
That's true.
You gotta buy 2 copies of the game if you want to get them all.
One of the things actually that this discussion is kind of like making me like something more about the film. I didn't like the part where the kid started basically becoming, little Carrie and stuff, like choking people and
killing his mother.
Basically, right? But he blamed the other dude and like tried to like force choke him and stuff. But and I didn't like that.
This was a Star Wars movie in disguise.
But I didn't like that stuff. But now, as I'm understanding that the ghost saw something of herself in the kid, like
a kinship.
Yeah, or like the same sort of power and all that sort of stuff. Now I kind of get it, where it's like, yeah, that's what that was about. Was before I was like, fuck, every other character in this movie is a secret X-Men or something like that, and it was just.
Yeah, it actually, if it follows the rules of the first movie, though, if you want to, because in the first movie we get the flashback where we find out that what is Samara? What is her name in this one? Sadako. We see that Sadako's mother apparently had powers, and then we know that the kid's father has powers, so it does seem to pass down.
Yeah,
so they really do like she is along a maternal route, and he is along a paternal route. I don't know why I said it like that, but it's very. They're mirror reflections of each other by this point. Right. So that actually does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I just didn't really think of it while watching it, whereas like I just thought of it as everyone's got powers, and suddenly this has stopped being about the evil tape, and it's now about this kid and his powers, and it's like
remember when there was a tape in this movie?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say by the end of this movie, the tape is completely irrelevant. I mean, because the tape is just the conduit, right? And now, I think that was the thrust of the movie, was that Yoichi became the new conduit. Mm-hmm. Because he was somebody that she was like, oh, this is maybe a more effective path to revenge, and maybe even a second life, like because there's sort of shades of possession and stuff within that.
Yeah, bring him back to Exorcist 2.
Oh man, let me tell you, this is basically
the Ring 2 remake of the Heretic.
Yeah, this is this is the I kept thinking, I was like, man, this is like a better version of Heretic. There are some parallels, but anyway, no, I kept seeing that sort of happening, I don't know. I was entertained by that, and I thought when the ending occurred, that's kind of what kept going through my mind. Is like, oh, this is him sort of showing like a resilience to that, and she didn't really know how to handle it, and in a way, it sort of neutralizes her.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the not that ending, but like the true ending of the film when we come back to the reporter or the editor, I guess, and we find out like, oh, that guy that promised to watch the tape and didn't, he's now in a mental asylum. It's like, oh, does he feel like guilt because he killed her? It's like,
that's the impression I got.
They take a photo and they see that she's haunting him. Yeah. So it's not, he might be feeling guilt, but he's also feeling the icy cold grip of a pissed off ghost.
Well, and then I was wondering, like, I was like, is this just like a completely related but sort of unrelated ghost story thing that's now happening?
I 100% say
what a bonkers way to end your movie. Like all the shit that happened. Also, it caused more ghost stuff. And it's like, but it's not really related to her. But
it's related to the fact that he made a promise and then failed, so she died with the grudge. Going, as Sadako came for her, what we don't see is her going, that son of a bitch, and then falling over dead.
Well, the reason I asked that is like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, Sadako's just like, that's like taking on different forms now or something. Like using other things and people to sort of exact her revenge instead
which makes sense with what happened with the boy, so
right. Yeah, but now that we're talking about it, I think it's kind of more fun to just like, nope, this is just a ghost, and she's haunting him.
It became a Jew on the grudge ghost.
Yeah, right.
That 100% fits though with the Japanese style of like how you curse somebody. So it legitimately is just a tangential ghost.
Yeah,
that's great.
Which that's some balls to end your movie with, just like,
that's a ballsy ending for sure. Yeah, it's like it's completely unrelated to like the core narrative. It's just like,
he dropped out of the movie for 40 minutes. Like he just disappeared and then he comes back for
It's like how Hitchcock will have these like really impressive like thrillers, and then the very end is like this weird gag that has nothing to do with the movie. Like he'll just end with like some weird like, come here, you, and did you pay the maid? And like everyone kind of laughs, and then it ends. Yeah, it's like the ending of North by Northwest or something, where it's just some random shitty joke, like after this awesome movie.
The way you said that, going into a tunnel, and it's like, oh, hey, they're gonna fuck.
Yeah, you're like what? Like juvenile humor and no real wrap up to the actual. Okay, fine.
You just made in my head what you just made picture was like Hitchcock does that part, and then we have a freeze frame, but it's like police force where they're holding the thing and a chip just comes out. It's like that was a weird choice, Cock.
Hitchcock's one of my favorite directors, but his endings are just so freaking bizarre. I mean, they're of their time, but like this kind of reminds me of that in a way where it's this kind of irreverent ending for a movie that's built around a totally different character.
To bring back to one of the other spooky scenes, there was a great moment where like the mirror that we see in the video comes back.
The mirror scene.
Will you set it up for us, Kel?
Okay, so like they go to this inn. I think it's an inn, right? Yeah.
I think so. It's on they go to the island where she's from, don't they?
Right. Yeah, and they go to the inn, and it's like they start, remarking upon things. Basically, they see the mirror from the video, and then suddenly there's the woman in there, and then here comes Sadako walking up, and suddenly the mirror moves to reflect her instead, and the woman in the mirror looks back like, "Aw, aw," well, and then it just keeps repeating forever, and it's fucking weird, but it's cool.
By the mirror moving, what you mean is like we have it set up so when we see the woman in the mirror, she's in the left side of the frame. Suddenly she like blinks out and the mirror appears on the right side of the frame with Sadako, and then they go back and forth, like cut in between. Like they don't cut the film in that, but they're cut in the location of this mirror in like a second. It's not like somebody moves it; it just blinks and it's there.
Yeah. It get the impression that if someone is moving it, it must be Sadako. But we don't see that. It is seriously just a mirror disappearing and then materializing elsewhere, and then back and forth, back and forth. It's an odd sequence, but it's also kind of creepy because they're basically walking through the videotape now.
Yeah.
Gore Verbinski does that a little, doesn't he? Not the blinking of it, but like where like somebody in the video would look to the right, and then our character looks to the right and sees an image that was in the video, where it implies that there's almost it implies that there is some sense of geometric concreteness to the video, where in this one, that's entirely tossed out, but yet they're still in it. But even the way they're in it completely fractures any sense of the geometry of it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit like revisiting the scene of the crime, sort of thing,
Ooh, that is. I like that phrasing of it.
But it's also like walking through a dream, in that it doesn't make sense, and these characters are dead, and yet they're standing right there. And they don't seem like they're present threats, but yet we know that they should be.
The woman might not be, but Sadako certainly is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely feels like spiritual footprints that they're kind of following.
I like that one as well.
Stumbling upon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might actually be one of the best scare scenes in the movie, I think. But as far as supernatural whatever going on.
Yeah.
We talked very briefly about the scene at the mental hospital with the girl from the first movie, but what we didn't go into is so she has a fear of the television, and they want her to go outside and get some air, and so they bring out the screen in order to walk her so that she can't see it. But then, like, the TV starts fucking up, but, like, everybody sees that the TV's fucking up. So you have all of these people who are in there for all sorts of different mental disorders that we don't go into any of them. But it's very clear that they're, like, there's something wrong with all the people here. Like, and you start seeing them freak the fuck out at this. And it's really deeply unsettling. It's very upsetting.
It is, yeah.
Well, they give you a sense that they're sort of like in their own whatever psychosis they're in or suffering from. They can sense the presence of something malicious, like they're attuned to it. And maybe they've encountered it before, being locked up in this institution with her. Maybe
the
this has happened before.
Right. The implication seems to be that she has some sort of residual, spiritual, supernatural, whatever left on her from the encounter that's causing, like, she can basically make her own videotape now if people plug her into a VCR, which they basically tried to do.
Videodrome. We're back to Videodrome.
Right? Yeah.
There was one line that, Paul, you had said about how in each of their own psychosis, they sort of have maybe encountered something like this before, which that actually brings up a interesting sort of experiment you could do. Like, what if, is that implying then that, like, there is that to whatever these psychoses are, does that imply that psychosis brings you closer to the supernatural? And if so, does that mean that the characters who are in this asylum, or, well, not asylum, that's a little, who are in this ward, are they then closer to the supernatural because of this? If they are, does that mean that we're all just one mental break away from being haunted?
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to it. It's a very interesting question that seems to raise.
I agree. Yeah, it is really interesting, and it definitely made for one of the creepier moments of the movie. And I think it's moments like that I really appreciate this movie gives you, because it's not always
there's a lot of them.
Right. It's not always about the explicit scare, or very rarely is it about that. It's mostly about conjuring something in your mind that you can't quite grab a hold of, which is sort of that malicious presence itself. Like, you don't exactly know what it is. You know it's there, and you know it isn't good. And
absolutely,
other people react to it like that is just completely unnerving.
Yeah, so listen up, Iida. God, this Ring 2 is so much better than Spiral. It's shocking to think that they released that on the same day. Like, they just got it so wrong.
Does anybody here like this more than the original Ring? I don't.
It's close for me. It's not. It doesn't overtake it, because the first one. Well, I think that with the big scare moment from the first one put aside, I think that I like the scares and the supernatural in this one more. But I think that I am more attached to the characters in the first, and I think that that's what kind of carries me through.
Yeah.
I think the first one's just probably a tighter movie. Like, it just it works, and that's always what I fall back on. I'm like, it's just such a tight 90-minute horror film that works perfectly. Everything sort of amounts to something, and even through all of its crazy, movie logic to explain everything, which it doesn't really explain, but like all the stuff it throws at you, it still just feels really tightly written. And I followed it. I actually followed the first one incredibly easily. I never had any issues understanding what was going on. Like, this one, I'm like, what the hell is happening? But I still like it, like, which is a weird emotion to experience when you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
But
it's like between the first and second, they forgot to do their core exercises, and they're just like, this is the sloppy one. They're like, it's cheat week. I don't gotta stick to my diet anymore. Let's throw this in there. We'll throw a dash of possession. We'll throw a dash of pool horror, a new genre, I guess. It's absolutely just like, let's throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. Because when they did Spiral and paired it back to just the tape, that doesn't work.
No.
So you need the extra stuff.
Yeah, I agree. You have to go beyond the tape, which is something that, again, like in Western horror would never happen. If you had a big movie, like look at The Ring 2 in the US, it's like they don't go away from the thing that works, even though they probably should. Because if you're going to make a sequel, really the only way it's going to be truly something special is if you do something different with it.
Right, yeah.
What about you, Kel? On that, how do you rank these two together?
Okay, well, I definitely like the original film more. I just find that the final act and some other parts of this are just kind of messy, where I don't fully understand stuff. And I guess I don't mind ambiguity, but I don't like confusion. And so that's kind of where
Yeah.
but this is still a much better film than Spiral, and it's also a better film than Nakata's other Ring 2, which we'll get to on a future episode maybe. But which was the sequel that he made to the Gore Verbinski remake.
I really don't think I've seen that one. I've seen the attack scene with the animals, and then I laughed so hard, and I went, all right. And that was like 3 weeks ago.
I think I watched it when it came out, but I remember nothing about it. Like I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater, but I couldn't tell you a damn thing that happens in it. You know,
No, I haven't seen it in over a decade myself, probably not since theater or original DVD release, but I remember liking it more than a lot of people did, but also it's not a great movie, but I just didn't think it deserved the hate that it got. The other Rings sequel that the Hollywood made recently, that one kind of does deserve that hate, but you know.
That's another one I haven't seen.
I didn't watch it. Once I heard people's reactions to it, I was kind of like, okay.
I didn't even hear people's reactions to it. I just assumed. It's like a little bit too little too late, guys. Like,
right, exactly, right, yeah.
Well, is there any other Paul, do you have any other thoughts on Ring 2?
No, I mean I think we covered a good amount of it. Like I said, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it's a really solid sequel. I like that it goes in a different direction than the first one. I think it challenges the viewer a bit more, but in so doing, it creates a really palpable sense of dread that even if I didn't understand what was going on at points, like I was always following that line of dread and engaged in what was happening.
How about you, Kel?
I got nothing much more to say. I like the film. I enjoyed revisiting it. It is especially a welcome bit of entertainment after watching Spiral and it not standing up to my memory of it. But yeah, it's a good one, and I'm looking forward to watching Ring Zero next.
I haven't seen Ring Zero, so that should be fun.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And as for myself, I really like this film, though. You know what? It could have used an attack by a bunch of deer.
Sure. I mean, what movie couldn't?
Right.
We all need that.
Just the Breakfast Club, suddenly a whole herd of deer go flying through the library, books and glass everywhere.
Yeah, I think that would have been a really interesting addition to that movie, personally. I think it would work.
Oh, so Paul, where can you mentioned it before, but where was that horror column that you were doing, the Hammer one?
It's on Bloody Disgusting, and it should be roughly a monthly column. You should see one a month. I have some other articles that should be coming up there in the following, spooky months as well. So you should expect to see some things. Obviously, Written in Blood as well on Scriptophobic. So check that stuff out.
So yeah, Written in Blood is on Scriptophobic, and now the one that you have, the Hammer one, that's Hammer Factory.
Yes, yeah, Hammer Factory.
Cool, and I will throw how many of them do you have up now?
There's 3.
Cool. We'll throw a link to. Do you have like a profile page on there? Do they do for the writers?
I think so. I think. Yeah, actually, if you pull up my name, all the stuff, because I've written and I wrote like a Color Out of Space thing.
Oh, awesome! We'll throw a link to your profile on there then.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
You want to say anything else while you have a captive audience?
No, I appreciate the invite. This was fun. Check out the Ringu movies. Buy the Arrow box set. Is it in print still? I don't even know if it's in print.
I bought it like 2-3 months ago, so
okay, it's probably in print. So pick it up. Yeah, if you're interested in checking these movies out, it's a really awesome set.
Yeah.
And Kel, it's a friend of yours that's coming on for Ring Zero, isn't it?
Yes. That's the plan right now. Anyway, for Ring Zero, gonna have a friend of mine, Jay Hawkinson, who's written some stuff, including for Bloody Disgusting, and he's gonna be joining us to to talk about Ring Zero next week.
So you got that to look forward to, as well as a couple, surprises up our sleeves.
Yeah, Ring-A-Palooza.
It's an absolute nice. Ring-A-Palooza. Yep.
Yeah, we did.
The name that I forced on us without any consent.
Right.
It's a good name.
Pretty much, yeah.
So until next week, have yourself a good time, and make sure to check out Ring Zero.
All right. Bye, gang.